Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Keene State College Wellness Center Zoom workshop. Today, we're focusing in on part 4 of our Managing Unruly Emotions series. And what we're going to be looking at today are different techniques and having some discussion about acceptance and letting go of things that are beyond our control. My name is Jennifer Bellissimo, and I'm one of the pre-doctoral interns at the Wellness Center this year.
My name is Joseph Broder. I'm the other pre-doc intern at the Wellness Center this year.
My name is Tara Messer-Agra. I'm one of the master's interns at the Keene State College Counseling Center this year.
My name is Ben Friedman, and I am one of the master's level interns here at the Keene State College Wellness Center.
And like I said, thank you for joining us today. And what we're going to start off with is just a mindfulness practice. And we're going to be doing progressive muscle relaxation, just to kind of get ourselves into the habit of relaxing as we engage in some of this. We'll walk you through it, and then this just helps you take it home and do it on your own. So right now, if everyone could get into a comfortable position, either by sitting or lying down in a location where you're not going to have any interruptions. And if you want, you can close your eyes or set a soft gaze out in front of you. And allow your attention to focus only on your body. If you begin to notice your mind wandering, bring it back to those muscles that we're focusing in on. Take a deep breath through your abdomen and hold. And exhale slowly. Again, as you breathe, notice your stomach rising and your lungs filling with air. Each time you exhale, imagine the tension in your body being released and flowing out of your body. Inhale and exhale, feeling your body already relaxing. And as we go through each step, remember to keep breathing. Now we'll begin. Tighten the muscles in your forehead by raising your eyebrows as high as you can and hold. And release, feeling that tension fall away. Now smile widely, feeling your mouth and cheeks tense, and hold. And release, appreciating the softness in your face. Now I ask you to tighten your eye muscles by squinting your eyelids tightly shut and hold. And release. Now gently pull your head back as if you're looking at the ceiling and hold. And release, feeling that tension melt away. Feel the weight of your relaxed head and neck sink. Breathe in and out. In and out. Letting go of all the stress. In and out. Now tightly, but without straining, clench your fists and hold this position until I say stop. And release. Now flex your biceps. Feel that buildup of tension. You may even visualize that muscle tightening and hold. And release. Enjoying that feeling of limpness. Breathe in and out. Now tighten your triceps by extending your arms out and locking your elbows, and hold. And release. Lift your shoulders up as if they could touch your ears, and hold. And quickly release, feeling their heaviness. Tense your upper back by pulling your shoulders back and trying to make your shoulder blades touch, and hold. And release. Now tighten your chest by taking a deep breath in and hold. And exhale, blowing out all the tension. Now, tighten the muscles in your stomach by sucking in, and hold. And release. Gently arc your lower back and hold. And relax. Feel the limpness in your upper body, letting go of the tension and stress. And relax. Now tighten your buttocks and hold. Release. Imagine your hips falling loose. And tighten your thighs by pressing your knees together, as if you were holding a penny between them. And hold. And release. Now flex your feet by pulling your toes towards you and feeling that tension in your calves. Hold. And release, feeling the weight of your legs sinking down. This time, curl your toes under your tensing feet and hold. And release. Now imagine a wave of relaxation slowly spreading through your body, beginning at your head and going all the way down to your feet. Feel the weight of your relaxed body as you breathe in and out. In and out. In and out. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes and join us back at the workshop. How is that for everyone?
Give a thumbs up.
Yeah. It's a great way to start your day. It's a great way to end your day. It's a great thing to incorporate throughout your day. So.
And so with starting our workshop, I just want to give us a moment to reflect on any of the skills that you've learned from our previous workshop or workshops. And I know progressive muscle relaxation was one of those. And so I just want to give you about 30 seconds to just check in with yourself and think about what skills that you've been using that are working for you, which ones that you like, which ones that you kind of wish you were using more or less. And so I'll give you guys a moment to do that right now, and then we will get into our skills topic. Alrighty, so getting into our skills topic for this week, as Jen introduced us to earlier, we're going to be focusing on acceptance and letting go. And so our major topic for that is something called radical acceptance. And so some of you might be familiar with this phrasing or this topic, and some of you might not be. But before we kind of get into the specifics around radical acceptance, I want to kind of ask a question, and you can think about this yourself as we, as the interns, discuss. And so the question is, can we really control our thinking, feeling, and impulses? And so we'll have a little discussion around that as you kind of think about it. And so I'm sure there's a range of responses that come in with that. It's yes, we can, no, we can't, and some are falling in the middle. And so I guess up to the other interns, what do you guys feel about that question?
So I definitely think that we can. I also think it's a lot easier said than done. It's like, sure, there's like using these things in the workshops that we're doing that you're all hopefully watching. And it still doesn't always feel that way. And feelings come up really quickly, really strongly, and it can be hard to react in the moment to them in a way that helps keep them kind of where you want them to be.
Yeah.
I would agree. I think it's a little bit in the middle. I don't, I think we set ourselves up and we're like, oh, I can definitely do that. And then it doesn't happen because we're human. So we have, these impulses and we have these reactions and we have these like automatic thoughts. And there's so many different factors that kind of come into that. It can be our environment. It can be, just the mood that we're in at the moment. So I would agree with Joseph that it is easier said than done. And part of it is recognizing that we are all human. So not being too hard on ourselves, when we do have these reactions.
Yeah. How about you, Ben?
I agree. I don't think we can control our thoughts, but we can control our reactions to things, to the environment, to what's going on inside of us. Yeah, that's something that I believe we can do.
Yeah.
So like
we'll take practice.
Yeah.
So like we'll think our thoughts, and then it's really like what we do with that, how we react to them, where the control is.
Our actions. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and I think through having this very short discussion, like my goal was really just to see, it's kind of in the middle. Like we have some control over it and we don't have all the control over it, but with practice we can choose what we want to give more energy and power to in terms of the things we like allow ourselves to think about more or less, and the places we decide to put our energy and the ways we choose to react, whether it's in a positive or negative way. And so one of the tools in that is radical acceptance. And so radical acceptance is around kind of giving up that need for control as much and focusing on accepting things in our lives for the way that they are. And that doesn't mean that because we're accepting them for the way that they are, that we think everything's perfect and that we totally agree with the way everything's going in our lives. We can still choose to disagree or feel a little bit stressed out about an event or a situation, but by accepting it and not giving it more kind of negative thought and energy on our part, we allow ourselves to be released of some of that pressure to kind of change something that we're not able to change. And so in trying to apply radical acceptance, you can apply it to anything going on in your life. It could be a specific situation, it could be an argument, it could be with a test result, it could be with anything. And it's just accepting what's going on in your life for what it is and realizing that this is what's going on and I can't change everything. And there is the saying that we will talk about later, and it comes from the Serenity Prayer, which is to change the things that we can and to accept the things that we cannot change. And so I think that's a really important kind of choice point for us in our lives, because oftentimes we try to continuously change things that are out of our control or things that we necessarily don't need to control. And that takes so much energy from us and creates a lot of frustration. Whereas oftentimes if we choose to, accept it for what it is and say it might not be causing, it might not be something that we necessarily need to change, and allowing it to just exist as it is, we would, save a lot of that kind of stress and energy that we would be putting into the situation. And so I'm going to open it up to the other interns as well to kind of talk about their views on radical acceptance from this perspective and how they feel like it's useful in application.
Well, so one way that I like to think about it is sometimes we can get so sort of hyper-focused on the way we think things should be, or, this thing that's happening and we want it to be this other way and it should be this. And that's where a lot of that frustration comes from. So much energy goes into fighting towards how things should or shouldn't be that we kind of lose sight of what they are. And so to even be able to change a situation, a setting, to change something you have control over, you kind of need to accept it for what it is first, and then do something about it and change something that you can change.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the common themes that has popped up, in my practice and in my life is, especially when people feel wronged and they want others to change and they want others to, behave or say, or, the way that, that person who's been wronged wants. And part of this like acceptance piece is accepting that you can't control others just as much as you may not be able to control the environment and all of that. But there are things that you can do. And it's when we put so much effort into like wanting others to change and taking those negative emotions of feeling wronged, that's when we become stuck. So I think like the acceptance piece is huge in terms of regulating yourself and also like moving past what's kind of holding you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that's the really beautiful thing about the radical acceptance is that you can apply it to like any situation, including the relationships that we have in our lives, because whether it's like a friendship or a romantic relationship or like the relationships we have with our family, like we don't have a lot of control over the way other people act or treat us a lot of the time. We like to think that we do. But, just the same way that we have our free will and the way we want to act, we will act. Everyone else in our lives has that as well. And while we can hope that people will treat us a specific way and that we are reinforcing specific patterns in our lives, there's, no guarantee that people will treat us a specific way, and they don't have to treat us any specific way. They can live their lives the way they want to and the way they feel is true to themselves. And so applying that acceptance to that as well is really important, because no matter what kind of relationship it is, we might want it to be different in a very specific way and try to change it and change that person. But it can lead to kind of a lot of turmoil and negative feelings and frustration for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. This kind of concept is really just about managing your emotions and just kind of finding that balance in your life. And radical acceptance is it's really a lot in early recovery for people with substance use disorders. Just to, like they say, surrender. And I think sometimes people misinterpret the surrender and acceptance as like the same thing. But, I like to, as one of my favorite people always says, sometimes surrender means giving up trying to understand and becoming comfortable with not knowing. I think that's one thing that can get us stuck, is like, why isn't that person calling me back? Why isn't this going my way? We're creatures of trying to understand things, like to understand patterns, to put words to things. And I think that's, sometimes we just don't know, and it's okay. I just don't know.
Yeah. And I think there is that important point again of like the things that we can control and the things that we can't. Because of course, if something is really like harming you in a specific way, like those are moments to take action and to get yourself out of that situation or to change the situation. But in the moments that we have those choices in terms of kind of smaller stressors that kind of are piling up and really causing us still harm in a different kind of way, we can choose what we feel like we need to try to control, because we don't need to control everything, even though we feel like we might need to control everything.
And so I guess just sort of noticing the time that this workshop's been running for right now. So what are some ways of kind of taking that control? What are ways that you have to sort of actually change some of the things you do have control over?
I think for me, the biggest piece is recognizing what you can control and what you actually, out of those things that you can, because I think we can control so many things in our lives that like we don't need to be like in charge of or having to control all of that, and choosing the things that are really important to us and like having those priorities and really giving the energy to the things that we want to focus on. And so if you have an example, can be relationships. Like if you have a really great relationship with 5 of your really close friends, and then you have maybe like one friend who causes you a lot of stress, and you can choose to like invest more time and not necessarily control, but like you can control the investment of your time and your energy and your commitment to those 5 relationships, rather than giving that 6th one like as much energy and trying to control it and fix it and work on it if it's not really a priority for you. So I think figuring out what your priorities are and figuring out where these like areas of stress fall into those priorities, and figuring out where you can kind of let go of like having to control this thing is the biggest piece for me in terms of control.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a situation I recently heard about with someone who, like took an exam and felt as though the certain questions were, purposely put in there, to lower the grades, and just that subjective perception that we have when things are difficult. And, like, as we kind of talked through it, like, what can be done now? And kind of like taking that moment in time and just kind of pulling it apart and saying like, how did that impact the rest of that exam, or like where did you become stuck, and like because we all do it. We all have those moments where we focus in on like the tiny little thing, instead of being able to pull ourselves back and look at the big picture. And once we were able to kind of pull back, we realized that like the bigger picture is, okay, so maybe there was like one or two questions wrong, as opposed to like that initial thought of like, it was difficult. So accepting that, okay, so you got a couple of questions wrong because they were more difficult, and moving on past that, and what's the next thing. um, you know, that's a piece where I feel people get hung up, and we all do, by focusing in on one small little portion of something.
And something that kind of helps me with that, I've noticed, and you can use any of the techniques from the previous workshops of identifying how you're feeling, but in those moments when we're really frustrated with something this professor has done, or we just can't stand how this person in our friend group keeps doing this thing every single time, taking a moment to kind of check in with ourselves. Because part of accepting what is happening is also accepting our own feelings and our own response to it. And once you do that, it's like, oh, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm recognizing that like I'm actually frustrated because I didn't prepare that much for this. That's when you start to find out sort of that option of, okay, well, what can I do here? Oh, well, actually, I could like study this more, or I can actually just say like no when that friend reaches out, and then now I don't have to see them for that situation. And so really trying to not just accept like what's happening around you in the moment, but also accept your reaction to it, because that's where you then kind of get that power to change what's going on.
Yep. Yep. And recognizing where your boundaries are. I think that's a big thing as well. Like where are those boundaries? Especially, talking about relationships, are you the person who always says yes all the time and always goes out of your way, and recognizing that there are times where that may not weigh on you, but there may be times where it does weigh on you, and you don't have, the time or the energy to put into someone who might require more, and being okay with, like saying no at times. That's hard for all of us to do, is to hold strong to those boundaries when we need to.
Also, when you wonder if you have boundaries around silence, when do you break a silence?
Yeah.
Self-aware humor is the best kind of humor.
Ben, did you have anything you wanted to add on that before we
That was great. Yeah, that was great.
I guess I want to shift towards a little bit more of like strategies to kind of use radical acceptance more in your life, and how you can kind of remind yourself to apply it. And I think for me, something that came up when we were running these workshops in person was this saying of like go with the flow. And that was something that I hadn't heard before and like in this context, but I thought it was really fitting, and it's something I've still held with me. And I think that's a nice way to kind of remind yourself to like just radically accept what's going on, is to try to go with the flow a little bit more and realize like, yeah, they messed up my coffee order and that's fine. Like they're going to fix it, or maybe I'll get something else this morning instead. And then you go with the flow of the day in the morning and whatever's happening to you. And so I feel like that's a helpful saying, and hopefully other people think so too. But I think that's one way you can try to remind yourself that you want to try to accept the situation more, is just to try to go with it and go with the flow.
Yeah, it's funny, as you were talking about that, I can think of so many times where, one thing goes wrong in the morning and that just sets the stage for the rest of the day. So, just reminding yourself, and I think when we talk about acceptance and we use the word radical, it's because it can be very hard to do. You know, it can be a major shift in how we perceive things. So it's really important to remember it can be a very big shift, and go against what our natural gut instinct is, until we kind of like practice it and figure it out.
Yeah. And with like actually applying it is accepting that you're not going to be able to do it all the time, and accepting that you're going to mess up, and that you're not going to be able to accept everything, and but like the point is that you're trying, and it's a practice like anything else, just like any of the other mindfulness practices that we do. Your mind is going to wander, you're not going to do it perfectly, and the point is never to do it perfectly. The point is to keep practicing and build it up. Just like any other skill or muscle, you have to keep putting the practice and the work in until you start seeing kind of the growth and the results, and slowly you'll be able to accept things a little bit more easily and more frequently than you were before. Yeah. Do you guys have any tips on how you feel like you can remind yourself to apply radical acceptance?
I guess it's less a reminder to apply it and more like an opportunity to apply it a little bit differently. Just sort of the idea of kind of like Jen said, this isn't necessarily an easy thing to do. It's a challenge. It's a sort of counter to what we might naturally go towards. And so sort of trying to accept that, like I think a few of you have mentioned, like we're human and we make mistakes. And even if we're struggling with radical acceptance, like that's something that's okay too. There's no expectation that this is going to suddenly be like, ooh, radical acceptance, I like it, I'm going to do it. And then you do it and everything's better. So sort of accepting that, like, you know, we have boundaries, we have limits, and we're all learning. So going easier on yourself, allowing yourself to struggle, and then seeing what you want to or can do about it to make it easier.
Yeah.
And also recognizing that no two situations are ever going to be alike. So just because maybe you accepted something and worked through it one time doesn't necessarily mean that next time, you know, it's going to be, you're going to have the same response. You know, and that's okay. You know, I agree with Joseph, you know, being kind to yourself and allowing those opportunities where maybe your response wasn't what you wanted it to be, and learning from it, and taking that time for some self-reflection and thinking about what could have been different with regards to your own response, not about the things that you don't have control over, you know, but not allowing it to beat yourself up over it.
Yeah.
And a bit of a, I guess, a shameless plug before we sort of wrap this one up. If you're looking for or hoping to find ways of doing just that, or things that can help you do just that, just check out the other workshops we've got set up. Maybe stop in on some of the live ones if you can. And we've got all sorts of resources coming through here for you to use to really achieve these things.
Yeah.
And I think Jen did talk about this, the skill of like knowing when to say no to specific kind of like commitments or situations. But I guess I just wanted to highlight that a little bit more, in really choosing what you want to commit your time to, and the skill of knowing what you really care about and saying yes to those things and say no to the things that you don't have the time for. Like, even if it's something you are really passionate about, recognizing your own boundaries and your limits, saying yes to, you know, something that you are passionate about but really don't have the time or the energy to do, can be really frustrating because you don't have the time or energy to commit to it the way that you want to. And oftentimes I feel like with social engagements and friends, we often feel the need to say yes to seeing them when we really need some time alone for ourselves. And so I think that's a really important practice that we need to kind of like take in with this focus of acceptance and letting go. And how that ties into the power that we do have on the places that we do put our energy, which is, saying yes to doing the things that you want to do and saying no to the things that, you're not interested in putting your time and energy into, in terms of like the social and like academic commitments that we engage in.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, go ahead, sorry.
No, I think a great thing to kind of wrap up this session with would be something that, the Serenity Prayer. Ben, I know you have it, and I just want to recognize that, even if you aren't religious or spiritual, there's a lot of important points in this prayer. So we'll just kind of wrap up this session with Ben reciting the prayer for us, just to keep those important points,
It's a
there.
very good way to summarize radical acceptance.
Yeah.
All right, so HP, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, please.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ben.
Beautiful.
And thank you all for taking the time to watch through these workshops. Before you head off, please just fill out the survey. Got a link to it located somewhere around where we are right now. And yeah, see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.